sort of guide you.
Okay.
If I want. Or when you see that one is kind of taking off, you can go in.
Okay.
Normally, do you kind of play it back and forth?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, Gary Martin, welcome to Dallas-Fort Worth.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Hi.
I'm sitting here looking at the two of you, and of course we know you're brothers. But in the movie, in the Krays, you're playing twins, and you really do look like twins.
Mm.
So, what did you do for the film to make yourselves look more alike?
So in reality, I'm the old man. I'm 2 years older than him. It's a matter of really just dyeing our hair black, putting on weight, losing weight. I had to put it on.
Well, we just had to
out.
match each other's weight, you know, so we look more alike.
But it was really just simply just in their hair, you know, that I think brought us together.
It was quite frightening at one point. I remember walking into a studio with a video camera looking at Gary, and I had to check twice whether it was on playback or whether I was recording, you know, if I was looking at me through the lens, which was very disturbing.
Aside from the fact that you had to play twins, what was the reaction when you first talked with film people about, here you are, rock musicians, wanting to play these highly dramatic roles?
That's actually not what happened. That's not true. The film company came to us and asked us if we wanted to take on, you know, if we were interested in auditioning, screening for this part. There were other brothers also that were being looked at. They've been trying to make this film for about 20 years, but never really had the right script or never had the money. We then were chosen, were asked to do it, and then it was a matter of trying to get the money. So there was a package. So it wasn't something that was instigated by us. Obviously, it was an opportunity to quite a daunting opportunity, because these are very, very well-known people in Britain. But to take on quite a unique story, you know, as actors, to play not just individual characters, but to try to develop something that was a single kind of unit, the bond between the two twins, almost one being.
Then for you, Martin, did you have any qualms about getting involved in this kind of project?
Oh my God, no. I mean, Gary and I were at drama school for nearly 10 years when we were children, and we finished there. I was 17 when I left, I think, before we went into the band. So as soon as somebody come to me with an offer like that, you know, a major British movie, I jumped at it. It's incredible.
I mean, it's just because everything seemed nicely as though it was going full circle. We'd actually started when I was 10 and he was 8, doing a television programme together as brothers on a BBC play. And then we went into the band later on. And then finally to come back into the film business as brothers, playing brothers, was a great opportunity. I don't think they could have had these characters played by actors that weren't related. It was hard enough convincing the audience that they were twins on screen. So I think it had to be brothers. We therefore had a sort of a spiritual connection that was truthful, that was real.
Did you have a chance to meet the real Krays?
Yeah, we did. I went along with Gary to meet Ronnie in Broadmoor, which is a prison hospital. And I mean, it's a daunting experience, you know, even walking inside a place like that, let alone meeting Ronnie. And but it actually didn't help at that time, I didn't think. It was very late on in our preparation, towards the end of the time, quite close to filming. And I found it somewhat distracting that instead of the guy that I was trying to play back in the 60s, he was now like 50 odd years old and sitting in a prison. It was very distracting for me, so I decided not to meet Reggie for that reason. And which talking to people, actors, afterwards, that it's quite a common experience not to want to meet the person that you're playing. And so, but Ronnie was it was good for Gary.
But I didn't really get the real truth from Ronnie. I was interested in his relationship with his brother and his opinions of Reggie's wife, who finally committed suicide. And I don't think I got the real truth from him. But I got quite a lot of information about how he felt before and after he killed George Cornell. I mean, he explicitly described his feelings sort of minute by minute, which is a powerful experience. At that time, I was so subjective to him, I was becoming enveloped in his character, that I had no moral qualms about what he was telling me. And I was fascinated, but I was trying to take it on board because I was just about to do that myself. And when you're playing a character, no matter how evil, you have to believe in what he's doing at that time. No longer, lad.
How factual is the story?
It's not factual in that it doesn't go along and place everything in chronological order where and as it happened. It distorts the facts in order to reveal to the audience something about the characters they wouldn't have otherwise have seen. That is truthful. What I think it's exposing is truthful, but it makes amalgamations of 3 or 4 different incidents. It takes the 2 murders that were in fact a year apart and puts them on the same day, the murder committed by Ronnie and the murder committed by Reggie, in order to show you the differences between the characters and to make the point that it was these 2 murders that actually destroyed them in the end, and how it was Ronnie's way of bonding him together with his brother forever.
Martin, why do you think these twins turned to lives of crime?
It's a very hard question, and it's a lot of people, I think, who have seen the film wag their finger at the mother, you know. But I can't personally see that. I don't know. It's just a set of variables that come together at that point. In the year just after the war, when working class kids were trying to make the most of themselves and get out of that poverty. It's very hard to say. I think that's one thing that the film does, which is quite good, is that it makes you leave the cinema asking those questions rather than having an answer drawn for you and saying this happened, then this happened, so that equals this. It makes you come out of the cinema thinking about it.
Violence was a means of expression and communication in that area at that time. It was more acceptable, and there was also a very much us and them between the people who lived there and the establishment being school, army, the police. So that was a fight, and living was a fight. Ronnie and Reggie, who were given more attention than most normal children would have had, because they were twins and they were put on a pedestal, they were their mother's dream, you know, pride, were also incredibly good street fighters. And they would have got a thrill, I think, from the power of being in 2 places at once, the intimidation that they could have put upon other people by the fact that they were almost one being but twice as big and ubiquitous in that sense. So I think all of these things would have fed their egos. They wanted to be at the top of the hierarchy in their particular class, you know, which is based on violence.
And basically another reason could be that the sheer competition between the 2 of them growing up as twins, you know, starting at an early age, competition at school with friends and competition with girlfriends and so on, and even down to their mother's love, you know, at the same point. Growing up as twins is an incredible experience. But I think that would lead on to violence as well. I do one thing, so the other guy has to do it the step further.
I mean, I'm not condemning all twins into being, you know, potential murderers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. My original statement was it's very hard to say.
Are they identical twins?
Yeah, they were. But they grew apart physically, I think, later on.
What was your perception of them before you ever got into this project?
Well, they're sort of cult figures, really, in Britain. They're very well known. The media are very fond of them. There have been lots of books on them, and most of the anecdotes are pretty fictitious. They've become legendary, infamous. Not in the same sort of way as like a Robin Hood. I mean, these are seen as being fairly horrific characters. But the media were always interested in them from the 60s when they were not even in prison yet. They were still having their photographs taken. And so I knew quite a bit about them. That was the most scariest thing, actually, as an actor, to try to be these characters. We can only make one version of them. You know, we're in them in people's minds. You know, they're much larger than life. You know, I wanted this character to be a human, real person. That was quite difficult.
How are people who know about the Krays, how are they responding to the film?
I mean, the film in England came out in April, and it was #1 box office for weeks, and it's only just gone off to cinemas. But I actually feel that the film could easily be better received in America, where people that don't know about them. I think the trouble was in England that people knew the stories so well that they went to the cinema and expecting to see their favourite anecdote on the screen, and you know, there's so many of them, you can't fit them all in. Where the movie itself stands up on its own as a good film.
How did it happen that so many well-known entertainers were seen with them and sort of socialized with them?
I think there's a mutual thrill that sort of the famous and the dangerous get out of being with each other. Ronnie and Reggie wanted glamour. They wanted what they called the good life, something they would never have achieved within their environment normally. They wanted to be looked at and have their photographs taken. They wanted to meet these stars. I mean, Judy Garland actually went to their house for tea, you know, in the East End of London. And I think there's also a thrill that people get out of hanging out with or being that close to people who let the dark side of their lives run their lives. I mean, to be that near to evil and violence, I think, can be thrilling. I mean, that's a sad thing to say, but it's true. And evil is attractive in many ways.
Had the Krays invited you all as musicians to come to tea, would you have gone?
Well, they invited us to see him, but...
Yeah, I mean, we went for the same reason, because, you know, we were fascinated, the same as most people are. I mean, evil's something that everybody keeps locked away. It's right down here, you know, but it's fascinating to look at every now and again.
Okay. Is there any hope at all that they will be released from prison?
Oh yeah, they will be. 7 years' time, I think their sentence was a recommended 30 years, which means that they're not going to come out. You know, it's going to be 28, 29 years before they come out. But the next 7 years, I think Reggie Kray will be coming out.
And they were made an example of, really. 30 years was a huge sentence for the actual crimes they committed. People have committed far more heinous crimes for shorter sentences, but and I think it was at a time, you know, when the establishment were very scared of anything like that happening again. You know, the people running the whole of London's underworld, the vice world. I mean, it's much more contained now. And also, what was frightening for them was the fact that these characters were popular.
Are they considered psychopaths?
Ronnie's actually paranoid schizophrenic, I think, officially. Reggie isn't.
Reggie's just a hanger-on?
Well, no, Reggie's not a psychopath, but I mean, actually...
neither's Ronnie, really.
No, Ronnie's schizophrenic, but Ronnie's much more comfortable nowadays than Reggie, I think. I think Reggie actually has a much rougher time in prison. Reggie is category A in prison now, which means that he's looked in on every 15 minutes. You know, he's treated that way, in solitary practically. But so I think Reggie's become the angrier of the two now. And Ronnie's in a prison hospital, and he still wears his silk suits. When we met him, he had his monogrammed white shirt on and gold cufflinks, and you know, he's a lot more comfortable, I think.
I think Reggie's a good example of the way that prison doesn't rehabilitate people. It just makes people more bitter.
Charlie Kray, their elder brother, was a technical advisor. Did you talk with him?
All the time. I mean, we hung out with him and his friends and people who used to be in what they called the firm, which is, you know, the gang. Really picking up the body language, the way they talk to each other and all of those things, and just getting information. Charlie was a touchstone with the 60s, really. For us.
He gave us a lot of encouragement. Him and also like all the firm, the gang, you know, that were on the set every day. They used to come up to us and say, "My God, you remind me so much of Ronnie or Reggie." And it wasn't that we were trying to impersonate Ronnie or Reggie. It was that I think we had captured their attitude that they had back in the 60s, and we gave off the same type of aura. and we had the relationship between us and them in order, and I think they appreciated that.
What is Charlie like? Is he a decent guy?
Yep, he's a nice guy.
He's done his 12 years.
Mm.
He was in prison also.
Oh yeah, 12 years.
As
Accessory to murder.
and what does he do now?
I wouldn't like to say.
A businessman still,
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. So the firm is alive and well.
I don't think so, no. I mean, it's much younger blood now. These are old men. I mean, and it's also more sort of the vices are looked after by different people now. This was the only time that it was the one gang running the whole of London.
It was the closest we ever came to having something like the mafia. It's the biggest organised crime that England ever saw.
And it still exists in some form.
In smaller groups, I think. There's no like one person or two people that run the whole thing.
Well, I must tell you both again, very impressive performances. Really.
Thank you very much.
Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
And given the current trend of films, the Krays should just pick up and run right in there with the pack, the way things are going right now in this country.
Mm.
So I wish you all the best.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Cheers.
I'll give you a lead into that. Looking at you here in person, you don't look at all like twins, and yet on screen, you look very much like twins. Now, how did you achieve that?
Yeah, I'm sort of 2 years older than Martin, and so we had to draw ourselves together quite a bit. We dyed our hair. I mean, they both having black hair, I think, brought us our features closer.
The key was that we never really wanted to try to look like them so much as looking like each other, and we thought that would be much more convincing.
And you're both about the same size, so was there any problem size-wise?
Yeah, Gary put on a bit of weight, didn't you?
I had to put on weight to match up with him, you see.
He was skinny.
That should cover it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
One that's a heroin addict, and they'd find each other at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That was a good film. Bob Hoskins was great in that film.
Mm-hmm.
And blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Just like this. Bit of hands, bit of movement. We're off. Actually, they're doing us non-stop here today. Charlotte's got us doing an interview at the airport just before we get on the plane. So.
Oh, I can't. Dark glasses, beard.
Oh, Perry Stewart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's him, wasn't it?
Who's that?
The guy we last spoke to. I think.
Who?
Oh,
that's
Oh, it's Mike.
But no, I mean, going down to Sydney for the winter. Will be
That's his trouble, I think. Primarily.
Mm.
His
Gar-
spots, your zips, are really what you find are hard.
That's
Isn't
right.
it? You know.
And Gary had to put on weight to come up to my level, didn't you, Gary?
Yeah, 'cause you're fat.
Because I was fat. 16,500 stone.
Where are you cutting me?
Almost waist up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Are we getting this?
okay.
Got speed?
Yeah.
How factual is this movie? Did you actually meet the Kray brothers? Charlie Kray was a technical advisor, the elder brother. What is he like? What does he do? What does Charlie Kray do now? He served time in prison? Why do you think the Kray twins became criminals? As I look at you both here, you don't look like twins, and yet on screen you look very much like twins. What did you do to yourselves? How do the English regard the Krays? What was your perception of the Krays before you got into this project? Okay.
Okay.
Why did celebrities want to socialize with these people?